So I just won a 6-man local. It was a small local, but it was our first Genesys one using Exosisters. Little background is that I used to play this deck, so I'm a bit familiar, and it got a lot better over time because of the new starter Sayori. But that doesn't mean it's good right now, because even though it got a new starter, which it was lacking, it also got some new cards that it's weak to, including most of the Mulch armies, especially Fulos, if you're starting with this one, because if they use it, you just sort of end on one interruption if you give them draw two, so it's best just to literally pass and give them one draw, sadly, and work on their turn and hope that they don't read your cards and interact with their graveyard. Anyways, I chose to use this in this format because I think it's a good time at the beginning, since people aren't optimizing their non-engine. I was just hoping that everybody wasn't maining Ash, Droll, Fulos, which I think are pretty good choices. And all three of those are silver bullets. There's one more that's really good that's only 10 points, and that's Nibiru. So Droll, Fulos, and Nib all really just destroy this deck. So while it seems good on the surface and pretty consistent with one-card combos and being able to play through interruptions and having a pretty decent board, it's weak for those reasons that it dies to each of those three cards, which probably should be mained or are safe to main at this point. Anyways, I'll get into the deck profile. So, 3 Martha, of course. It's the best starter over Aritama and Sayori, because if these get stopped by an Imperm or Veiler, which is more likely because it's less than half the amount of points, you just have more extension, and it doesn't cost you your normal summon. So with this, you have the quick play spell packs, and you have Ellis to extend with these guys. These are technically, I mean, this is definitely extender, so I guess it's about the same. But still, it's pretty good. And if you open both of those, you always start with Martha, because if this is stopped, then you're just kind of sitting on nothing, and it's a spirit monster, so if they imperm it just kind of sits on the field, doesn't even get to be a spirit. But as far as card quality, Aratama is definitely much better because it gets you to the full combo, which is Magnifica plus a trap, which is pretty, this doesn't sound very good, but it's like 4 banishes. Magnifica gets 2 by attacking out, and then Returnia gets 2. But that's a different point, because I don't exactly like to search Returnia. I like to search Vadis because of the weakness to Nibiru. Returnia can't be used if you have a non-Exosister monster. Another reason is that Kaijus cost 0, so I expect people will at least try them, so that's another reason. And that'll reflect some of my ratios later on. Hiyori, this card is so good. I read the full effect just yesterday. I assumed that it was just a little bit better than Aratama. Okay, an updated version, you get to search out spirits, and it's an extender. But no, that's not the case. It can literally search out any Exosister main deck monster. It searches out any light or dark with 800 attack or defense, I believe. So you just search out Martha or Ellis, and it's unbelievable how good it is, and I don't know why it's not an Exosister monster. But yeah, it's so good, but you don't want to start with this since it's an extender, so you can play with it a little later. Another reason why is that if they do Nibiru you, you can hold this and the Sakitama and still have some plays. It's at least a rank 4. So those are the starters. 9, and we have a few more. So we have packs. I would say that this is probably the least good starter out of these ones, because it plays in the Droll. Like I said, this deck really suffers to Droll, because if they do it on any of these, you pretty much have 0 interruptions, unless you make a rank 4 that's an interrupt. But This is Genesys, so there's no Baguska. They cost you 2 million points. So it's just kind of sad. But there's a couple cards that play around it that I'll show later. Anyways, it's still an excellent card regardless of that because it can search you an extender or a starter. Next up is Vadis. I play 3 of this because I always expect my plays to get stopped because what I have been describing with all the silver bullets, Nibiru, Fulos, and Droll. That said, Fulos is even better if they know that I'm playing this card because they can just shotgun it on their turn and then I'm forced to use it immediately. So they don't get a draw off this, or I guess like 2 if they trigger the graveyard effects, but that's probably not very good of them to do. Still, I like it because if your plays get stopped, it's a good backup plan. But this is another card where if your opponents start to pick up what your deck does, they just won't touch their graveyard and just beat you down the fairway. Next up is the extenders. So Ellis. It's very good to search off Caspatel if you already have the combo going, or Sayori if you have the combo going. It's the best one, and you kind of run out of them because Martha gets it, and because Vadis can get it too. So keeping them in circulation is pretty important, and I kind of tried out Digesto Emerald to do that. The other extender is Sakitama. I have seen some people play 1, but I like 2 because I just like having plentiful extenders, and 8, it feels like a decent number, but 9 is even better. So I'll probably put in a third one a little bit later, and 2 was good. Also for your follow-up plays, even though Sayori is pretty much effectively a Sakitama, unless you get 2 rank 4s pretty easily if you have a second one, and you've already burnt out the first. The next ones, which are debatably cuttable, are these ones. The only reason why I like them is because Vadis, so you don't have to just burn through Martha and Ellis, because oftentimes you can use 2 Ellis just in 1 opening play because of Caspatel to get out to rank 4s if they interrupt you in any way with like Imperm or Valor. That said, the draw effect is pretty good, and drawing this with another Exosister is pretty good, even if they Ash Martha. I like this little guy. Lastly, I played 2 Returnia. I think 1 is a lot better. I never searched it because of the reasons that I already stated. But if you do open Vadis, which I play 3, it's pretty insane. And there's certain decks that can't afford to play Nibiru, and that can't, where it doesn't make sense for them to play certain cards that would make this card irrelevant or bad, like Kaijus or Nibiru, like I mentioned. And that's when you want to search it, and that's when it's really good because it's 2 banishes or an Exceed summon. And if you have Vadis and this, sometimes you can do some pretty cool combos. Like get 2 banishes still by exceeding with the monsters that you summon with Vadis, even if they don't play into the graveyard effect. Lastly, this is a card which I would also consider playing more of. 1 of doesn't honestly make sense because it's pretty much just an unsearchable 1 of because I'll never search it. Once in a while it's an interruption on my turn, so if I really know the meta, then it's good to search, but I don't think that will ever be the case anytime soon, considering that the entire point of Genesis is to be diverse and creative. So how it works is if I summon an Exosister Exceed either player's turn, it's a Black Goat's Laugh pretty much. So the idea is to eliminate some of those silver bullets, Nibiru and Droll. It only stops Droll if I start with Martha, and it always stops Nib, which is the whole point. And it's just like a blank card that stops Nib. That's what it seems like, but you always trigger it on your opponent's turn too because of Magnifica exceeding. And the spell and trap removal is pretty cool too, because there's all kinds of continuous spells and field spells that you want to remove that occur continuous advantage. That said, I would probably bump this up Definitely over Returnia at least, because it's just not good to open going second. Neither is Vadis. One more rant about that, but I would argue that it is, because if you open Spirit Monsters and somehow your non-engine gets you to a spot where you can resolve Exciton Knight with your Spirit Monsters without being interrupted on it, Vadis is such a good follow-up during opponent's turn, so you can still play the game. Next up is the non-engine kind of interruptions. Ash. It stops Fulos, it stops every random deck. The decks that I was most afraid of were Vanquish Soul and Dracotel, and they both appeared there in plenty. This stops all the Weird Fusion cards and searches. And against Vanquish, you just kind of want to Ash whatever you can. Like literally, if you Ash anything, they're in a lot of trouble because they need so many attributes and monsters in hand. Ashing Strav, Ryzen, or Stake Your Soul is pretty nice. Also, I didn't want to randomly get like FTK'd by stuff, and I like hand traps. Fulos, it's a level 4, which could come up with Sakitama, I guess, which is okay to make a rank 4 in an emergency if you somehow have that coincidental brick. But besides that, it's 7 points. It should probably be higher. It's very good. Yeah, I mean it's a max C that only works going second, so I quite like it. Droll Lockbird. This is pretty good. It's not as good in my deck because I've been talking about Fulos, but it's not effective against Fulos in this deck, considering that if you Droll after you Martha, you can't search with your Exceeds. And then if you summon an Exceed, they draw a card and you Droll. It doesn't do anything, so there's really no good time. So it's not exactly a card that defends your plays from that, but more so it's just to stop your opponent. And that said, I'm not sure if it's worth it. It was very cheap. It was only 5 points, and it's well-rounded. People, I expect, are playing a lot of consistency cards, especially in high-cost decks such as Vanquish Soul and all the newer decks like Dracotel. So this kind of punishes them for playing consistency cards, Upstart, Extravagance, and it's also just good against some of the meta. I chose Chalice as my last main deck point card, putting me to about 96 so far. I liked it because it's very versatile. You can set it going first. The other option would be to play 2 Veilers. I chose Chalice over it because there's a lot of decks where Veiler doesn't exactly hurt because they can either tag out or things like that. And I like this against Izuna. I like it against Famina whenever they try to fusion on my turn. And if they commit a play like that, where they're using multiple cards during your turn, or even one, and you Chalice it and stop it, it can be pretty devastating once you clear it for free with one of your Exceeds. So that's why I like it. Also because of for some reason I was afraid of True King of all Calamities, and this just always hits it every time. Would I still play it? Most likely. I like it. It's a really cool card. Veiler's probably better though. I just like this a lot. Lastly, non-engine, Final Bringer. Oh, sorry. So there's one more reason why I really wanted to play it over Veiler, and that was because of Flying Sea, which is the ultimate mega silver golden bullet to this deck. It costs 0 points for some reason. I think it should cost at least 5 because there's no link monsters to shut it down. So I was aware that nobody would be maining it, but these cards were still really good in the main, and they both out Flying Sea effectively. Even then, this isn't as good. Chalice isn't as good, I mean, because you can't use Returnia since you have Flying Sea and non-Exosister. So I like this. I also really like it because if you start with Some of the spirit monsters, and they imperm, you can just chain it and keep extending. If you search out Sakitama and you have another spirit or Martha, because otherwise if you start with a spirit and they imperm it and you have Martha in hand, even though I said that you should do it first, this kind of makes it a little more safe to do and can bait it out if you do it in that order, because you would rather burn this than not get a search off of your exceeds, if that makes sense. And yeah, it's just good for like clearing random back row and getting just free value going second or going first if they're already trying to out your card and you just chain it and eliminate it. I just love this card. It's like the equivalent would be enemy controller, but there's no links, so that's why I like this guy a little better, and considering it gets rid of back rows. Next up is the extra deck. I'll start out with the non-Exosisters. Chose to play Emerald. I wanted to play two, just because it recycles infinitely, and it would have been really funny. But realistically, you don't need almost any of the non-Exosister Exceed monsters. Maybe I just didn't research enough. But that's what I found, especially if you play multiple, because you can always get into more, especially if you're searching for follow-up off of Sayori or Hakitama. And that's why I think it's not needed. Next up was Utopia the Lightning. I chose to play it to out Towers monsters and just random monsters like that. This deck's pretty good at clearing monsters that just can't be targeted, so not really an issue with that, but if something slips through the Ash Blossom, which is kind of scary, that's my only interruption hand trap, and they make like a Towers like the Super Quant or the Blackwing thing, this can clear it, and the rest of my monsters can help clear the back row, like Michaelis and Magnifica. I chose to play Tornado Dragon, just I didn't know what people were going to play, and it's a free card. It's a staple. I chose to play this guy. He's just cool. He's just a cool guy. I didn't even read him, honestly. I know he takes a monster if they negate. Like I said, the non-Exosisters are really irrelevant. The only one I would say that is absolutely great is Excatonite, because you play so many spirits to extend, you can make this guy so easily without being locked out with Martha, and he just clears boards. And if you're expecting to play against Vanquish Soul or other decks that kind of put all of their resources onto the table, even though Vanquish Soul should hold in hand, it's just devastating, even if you have to lock your plays out for a turn, and that's why I play Vadis, so it hurts the recovery, and so you have follow-up at 3. Onto the Exosister monsters. We have Sophiel, which is an Abyss Dweller. Abyss Dweller costs 100, this one doesn't. Yeah, you can also detach and bounce, so sometimes you want to, if you know what your opponent's playing, you can start with this one with Michaelis, so you can just tag out into a Dweller before they play preemptively. Jabreen, this is easily the third most used one besides Magnifica, or I guess fourth including that one. It's an imperm. The turn is summoned, and more importantly, you can detach to make your guy gain 800, or everything gain 800, so Magnifica would be attacking for 72 total. And what I was attempting to do today to play around Nibiru was make Magnifica, if my board survived a little bit, and then if I had to set Vadis, I would go into the battle phase and summon Martha and Ellis, and that's over 8,000. And that's how I do that, thanks to this, because without it, it's not game with Vadis and Magnifica. So I really like it. Of course, Magnifica, you don't need 3. You hardly ever even need 2, and I guess that's where that little Utopia guy comes up. He's a pseudo negate that's like a snatch steal. Yeah, you make 1 on your opener, then 1 on the second turn to try to OTK. Next up, 3 Michaelis, definitely without a doubt need. It's the best card because on the turn that it's summoned, it's banished, and you can detach, search. So there's a lot of trickiness that you can do with it, especially if you're going second. You want to detach to search before you use the banish. because they won't be able to imperm it essentially, but if you start with the banish, they can just chain the imperm and you won't be able to search, if that makes sense. And lastly, Caspitel. I'll definitely play 3. I just couldn't find the third one, and I would just cut that guy. He's a badass card, but don't need him. Just need to maximize on the engine. This is great. You always go into it to make Magnifica and have follow-up at the same time. You can either search Ellis to make another rank 4 if you open up with Sayori, or you can just search Martha for the follow-up. And its second effect is pretty nice too. And the side deck, that's probably the part that is the most interesting or useful to know. Flying Sea, like I said, is a staple. You summon it to your opponent's board and they can't exceed. What is it good against? Any exceed deck like Exosister, even though I said Exosister isn't that good probably on paper it is because it's a 0-cost deck. So I expect a lot of people would use it, even if there's more information about why it's not so great. And it's pretty unfair. It just shuts you down completely. You can't do anything within your engine to shut it down. Very few Exceed decks probably can, unless you're playing like level 3s, which maybe if there's a level 3 Spirit, that's something else that I could do. That'd be really funny to beat Flying Sea that I could side into. I'll have to look at them now. Sakitama lets you normal summon any Spirit in addition to your normal summon, so that would just be a funny play to get around it. But yeah, I would say definitely mandatory because it shuts down a very popular deck 100% of the time, unless they have tech cards to out it. Next up is Ice Dragon's Prison. Going first side card, I like it for Vanquish Soul, I like it for Dracotail. Not even that I know if these decks are going to be meta or super popular, I just expected them to be at my local, and it's just so good against many other decks. Normally I would always side like Solemn Judgment, that just got limited though, so I was trying to just think of like decent go first sides that could interrupt or just stop my opponent completely. I found some other ones that are probably better, but this is well-rounded against more decks. So one of the cards that I said was probably better as a go first card was Mistaken Arrest. It shuts down a lot of cards completely, including Vanquish Soul, but it also stops your follow-up, so you have to make sure that you have some really good follow-up. Just set up like your Sayoris and your Martha follow-ups pretty wisely. Just hold them in your hand with this, then go for the OTK. Also, I think this is probably going to go up quite a bit because the gold rare, not even the gold rare, the gold letter rare is already like $2, so it's probably a good time to pick this up. Fissure. I guess another difference about this deck is that I'm not maining Shifter. The reason is because I expected Exosister to be popular, and I expected Graveyard decks to not be popular because Graveyard Hate is free. DD Crow, Skullmeister. So I expected everybody to use the logic of, well, if these cards are free, I expect everybody to be siding them, so Graveyard decks are probably not so good, so I'll try to play something else and gauge it out. And I decided to side this instead for going first. Not even necessarily as a floodgate, but halfway so. The real reason is to stop Droll Lockbird because it has to go to the graveyard, and Effect Failure, which is less effective, but Droll is the main one. And also it does beat some decks alone, so why not play it? Especially because mass back row removal is kind of expensive, except for Atrunade, but these aren't face downs. That's another reason why I think that card is not so great. And then Twin Twister like trades 1 for 1, so that's fine. DD Crows, just for any graveyard decks, like a Draco Tail or literally anything, and really good in this deck because it triggers Martha, so if I summon it off Vatus and they're playing around it, I can always just randomly DD Crow and get banished from the grave on some kind of resource, and then level up Martha into Caspitel, or not Caspitel, the other one, I can't even remember, Michaelis, and get a free banish. This is probably the best side card, but I just couldn't find more copies, so I ordered them. This is another one that will probably go up pretty soon. Spellbound, you just shut down your opponent's plays completely. D barrier is 100, but spellbound is 0 to my knowledge. I hope it's at 0. If not, I was cheating pretty hard. I'm at like 97 points. Yeah, it's a D barrier that also works during your turn. So even if you draw it for turn, there's so many decks that like to fuse, like Famina. So it just really decimates that deck. We have I have Herald of the Abyss. You can't play Kaijus and Exosister because then you can't summon Martha. I was afraid of towers like monsters. And I decided that 2 was fine. 3 was quite a bit of room because, as you saw, I have quite a bit of random jank in here that I wanted to keep in. And I didn't expect Towers decks to be that popular. I sided it, but I hardly used it. I found my next sidecar to be more effective, and considering that I also have Utopia of the Lightning, I'm not sure if Herald of the Abyss is actually needed. But if Lunalight is a real deck, which I haven't done any kind of testing with it at all, this is probably worth it because they can just obliterate your Utopia of the Lightning with that. So you need some kind of Kaiju alternative. This deck can play Sphere Mode. I guess you can still open packs or Martha, but they can play around it, so I like this. Lastly, actually the best side card, surprisingly, this looks like an Edison jank card, but yeah, Lightning Vortex was really good. My opponents, I played against 2 Vanquished Souls, and this just obliterates their inboard because the way that Vanquished Soul is in this format, you're kind of forced to play all of your cards out and not really hold your resources in the hand, and it's hard to get a lot of resources in the hands considering I play the hand traps that I do for Lostroll, Ash, so this forces them to go into like plays either rank 5 or just getting out there Holy Sue to try to get more resources, and it ends up backfiring on them and just obliterating them. So that's why I like it. The discard doesn't really matter either. It's just a free Raigeki, so I'll definitely keep this in whatever deck I decide to play next. So yeah, that was my Exosister deck. I'll probably play it again, but I have a few, or not even a few, I have a ton of other decks that I want to test before this and optimize. So yeah, thanks for watching.